Into the latest edition of ESPN FC Live. We're with you 3 times a week here on our YouTube channel. Joining me, Kate Murray, today we have Ryan O'Hanlon and Janusz Michallik as well. We're going to be talking about the Premier League title race, don't we always? And we'll also be looking ahead to a big weekend with El Clasico hitting the calendar. Then we've got some quick fire questions for Janusz to answer later in the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's get started, guys. Janusz, let me start with you. Slip-ups for both Arsenal and Liverpool at the weekend. City once again showing that when it comes to the business end of the season, it is usually things going their way. So what do you make of Arsenal's result in particular? That's where I want to start today.
Well, they panicked, right? I mean, look, I don't struggle because I remember as a player, but we struggle, right? Not knowing what's happening on the inside of any club around the world when we talk about this, and you have to give us opinions. We struggle with what, how to define pressure, right? Because you don't know. We know it's a pressure situation because you have 3 clubs fighting for the Premier League title, which hasn't happened in such a long time. And you could have made a case ahead of this weekend or throughout the season that all 3 had a chance, right? But that ended this past weekend, and you could see that in the first leg. I think there was a realization. I think Arsenal knew that they had to beat Villa. They knew it was going to be very difficult with Unai Emery coming back to his old club, and with the season that they've had so far, they knew it was going to be fairly open. But I think, once that Trossard chance went away and it became a grind and a struggle, I think there was a moment of panic. And after the 2 quick goals, especially the second one, you could visibly see there was a capitulation of not even being able to respond in any way in that game. In a game where I thought Arsenal would dominate, right? I mean, you look at the center of the pitch, and Boubacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz, 2 key players I felt ahead of the games for Aston Villa, and the way Arsenal play in the midfield were not even there. And that didn't make a difference. So, if I could guess, that's how you define pressure. They definitely felt it, and that's that. It's probably over for Arsenal.
Ooh, would you agree with that, Ryan?
That it's over?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think I think part of the thing with this title race is that, at least I don't think that this is a Manchester City team that is at the same level of the Manchester City team of seasons past, where we should just assume that they're going to go on like a Terminator style run and win from here on out. I think that's evidenced by the fact that like Arsenal have a significantly better goal difference still than Manchester City. I think you even saw it when Liverpool played Manchester City a couple weeks ago, and Liverpool like completely dominated the game in a way that they'd never have against Manchester City. So I think while yes, Liverpool and Arsenal both drop points and City easily beat Luton, and it sort of feels like same old, same old. I think that like I would be surprised at least if Manchester City run the table from here on out, and if they drop points, that means Liverpool and Arsenal both have a chance.
Oof. Can I push back a little bit, Ryan? You don't mind, do you? I mean, I hear you that it's not the same team, and you mentioned the goal difference, but I just imagine what's going to happen now where that carrot, now it's all there. I suspect that Real Madrid is going to, I don't want to say that because I'll regret it, but easily will beat Real Madrid again, which that in itself, that sort of a momentum is going to propel them. This is a Manchester City now that knows that what it matters is now, not the goal difference. What matters is where they are, what's at stake. They have everybody healthy. I mean, there's just to talk about Kyle Walker, who's ready for the game. I think Pep Guardiola said today that he's not sure if he's going to go from the start or if he's going to go, but he's going to be ready. Everybody's healthy, right? I mean, even that game away to Real Madrid, you have De Bruyne falling out of the lineup in the dressing room. Still 3-3. They've dominated Real Madrid last season. So I don't want to make this about Champions League, but I'm looking at this and some of the biggest things that we've talked about. Why Arsenal lost, and we didn't get to it, as part of it was lack of depth, right? I mean, you could see it in the second half. Maybe we bring it all the way around that. I can understand why Trossard maybe got a run in because he deserved it. But if I look at the key goals that he scored against Porto and against Bayern Munich even against Brighton, right, coming off the bench, you saw in the second half when really Arsenal were on their knees a little bit. I'm talking about in terms of physicality. Who's coming off that bench? Okay, we've had this Nketiah thing. Remember, I never believed in him too much. Not that he's not a good player, but I mean, Martinelli hasn't been at his best. So I mean, it's a miscalculation, I think, on Arteta's part. And I look at Manchester City and look at this. I mean, their best starting 11. I look on the bench and how, even if we think they're not as good as last year, they're certainly good enough to win that league and run the table. So I just don't know. I think the best is yet to come when it comes to Manchester City, at least in the Premier League.
So, Janusz, what's the difference between a miscalculation for Mikel Arteta and lack of depth in his squad?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it the whole time, but Arsenal proved it. And, it's a funny thing because, if you look at Arsenal, say, in comparison to Liverpool or maybe some other teams, Manchester City to a degree as well, I mean, they've stayed relatively healthy, haven't they, right, throughout the season. And he was playing very often this pretty same lineup for how long? And, sometimes you pay the price for that. And here, I mean, drop of Martinelli, we all know. I mean, look, Arsenal and Liverpool have the same problem also, not just, I mean, Liverpool doesn't have a problem in depth. Their problem is, which we'll hopefully get to it, is some key players not being at their best and some injuries still at a difficult time, but they don't have a consistent number 9. That's the issue for both. So for Arsenal, lack of depth and continuously, an issue with maybe the special player that kind of delivers in games like these. So lack of depth for sure. I can't push back on that, but I just, in that game against Villa, there was nobody that you felt comfortable coming off the bench where you say, wow, this player is going to change the game.
Janusz, let me stick with you because we're going to go to Ryan about Liverpool in a minute. It's actually the topic of his latest article and what's ahead for them. But when you talk about that game, why didn't he play Havertz up top where he has had success with him? This was one of the topics on FC this week. That was something that was questioned by the panel. What were your thoughts on that?
The only thing I can explain it is that sometimes managers feel like players need to get rewarded, right? And I mean, if you look at the game against Bayern Munich, remember that second half, right? I mean, Gabriel Jesus and Trossard changed the game. I mean, the assist and the goal from Gabriel Jesus, the assist was maybe better than, not maybe, for sure was better than the finish. But as I said, Trossard coming off the bench, 3 goals very, very recently, right? When you talk, Champions League for sure. And Brighton was a couple of weeks ago as well. So sometimes you just kind of, you say to yourself, well, how often can I not give them that chance? Because you know what managers do. Yeah. If you play well, if you train well, you're going to get that opportunity. I mean, these players want to be in the starting lineup. So he caved into that, even though Kai Havertz has been very good as of late as a number 9. I don't want to put this loss down to that because, as I've said, I mean, I think if Trossard puts that away, the psychology of the game changes dramatically. But those are the moments. That's what decides titles like this. We've talked about Liverpool, Manchester City, that 1-point game. I mean, nobody's going to sit there and say Liverpool we're not deserving that season. It was either or, and it turned out to be 98, 97 points. That's the difference sometimes. But yeah, I mean, you could question that certainly. I'd be careful because I just saw a team that was tired. I saw Declan Rice, who in the last couple of games was making massive mistakes. In this game's on the far post. I mean, if you look deeper, I'm trying to remember against Bayern Munich, it was the first or second goal where he was played behind by Leroy Sané. Goretzka got behind him, and he saw it coming, by the way, and he couldn't get there. I watched that closely because I was so surprised. It's kind of, I don't want to say lack of effort because he never shows that, but just I think he was at his depths, and I mean, he's been wonderful, but that's what happens, lack of depth.
So Ryan, let's get to Liverpool because you seem a little bit more confident in Arsenal right now and what's ahead for them, because your latest article is not so favourable for Liverpool's chances of winning the title. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say, but I think I want to, despite what I said earlier, Manchester City are significant favourites to win. But I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion in the way that it seems to have sort of overtaken the larger soccer discourse that they're just going to win out and win everything. But I think the article I wrote about Liverpool it's a little harsher, I guess, because Liverpool had finally kind of separated themselves by a handful of points at the top of the table. Were finally the favorites to win the league. They were heavy favorites to win Europa League, and then they drew with Manchester City at Old Trafford, got absolutely destroyed by Atalanta, and then lost at home to Crystal Palace. So I think with Liverpool, it's a little more cascading. You go from being favorites in two competitions to being favorites in neither. So I think that that's just kind of a quicker turnaround, I guess, for them. So that's why I wrote about them. And I think, I don't know, we're talking about Arsenal. I think we saw against Villa, like Arsenal's, the question with them is all season has been, can they create enough chances? And I think in the second half of that game, they struggled to create chances. While in the past 3 games for Liverpool, the 2 questions are, can they finish their chances? And 2, do they control games enough? They just don't. The bet that Klopp makes with Liverpool is we don't need to control games. We're better off not trying to control games, because we're going to create just tons of chances on the attacking end. We're going to score. And then Van Dijk and Konate and whatever third person is hanging back to defend counterattacks are going to deal with all the attacks into the box. And so I think with Liverpool, I honestly think the Man U game was sort of a complete freak result, that they win, I don't know, 85 times out of 100. Atalanta, they deserve to lose. And then Palace, they came out slow, but also created an absurd number of chances, but just didn't turn them into goals. So sort of everything, all of Liverpool's weaknesses kind of came together. Plus, I think bad luck, bad finishing, whatever you want to call it, to take them from, oh wait, we could win a treble, to now it's unlikely that we win another trophy.
What's your order, Ryan, right now of how it's going to finish 1, 2, 3 in the table?
I think it'll stay how it is. That's the most boring answer possible. I think that's the most likely outcome. But I guess what I will say is I think there will be shuffling. I don't think it's just going to stay how it is from here on out. I think if I had to bet, I would bet on City to, I mean, not considering the odds, but I think City are most likely to win. Then Arsenal just have a large goal difference advantage on Liverpool. Their schedules are, to me, not that different in level of difficulty from here on out. But I do think that, like, we saw Arsenal and Liverpool drop points in games where I don't think either team, like, was that bad. Arsenal easily could have been winning by multiple goals at halftime. Liverpool could have scored 3 goals, 4 goals against Crystal Palace. They just didn't. And that's how soccer goes. And I think Manchester City are probably going to get caught in a couple of those games from here on out too. It's just a question of, can Liverpool and Arsenal avoid slipping up from here on out?
So what happened to Liverpool in your opinion, Janusz?
Yeah, they picked the wrong time to be wasteful, right? It all came to a head. And again, I'll continue to say that. Now, being in the situation that they've been, you can call it a little bit of a choke, right? Because once you get there, you better finish it. And now sometimes you have a team that you know deep down that you're not really sure why they're up there. But Liverpool is good enough. And that's why I think I maybe, if I had to bet, I would say that Liverpool will finish ahead of Arsenal. I just think that schedule is much more difficult. If I look at Arsenal still having to play Chelsea, Spurs, and Man United, remember, the air came out of Liverpool. Now the expectations for them is not to win it. I doubt that they're going to finish this season for Jurgen Klopp in the manner that we've seen in the last 3 games. So all of a sudden, when I worried about had things were equal and say Liverpool, didn't lose, away games to Fulham, Everton, and West Ham look differently than they look to me now, because the expectation isn't for Liverpool to win it. And by virtue of that, I think their schedule is easier than Arsenal. I also think that getting players like Alisson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Diogo Jota back, speaking of lack of depth for Arsenal, I think clearly, in my opinion, it's a better squad overall than Arsenal. So I think that Liverpool may push it here, because I'm telling you, I think they know if you come to training and you see how much it means for Jurgen Klopp, how much it means to the supporters, and I just think that this is going to be a different Liverpool we're going to see. I'm not so sure with Atalanta. We've seen that happen, but 3-0, that's a difficult one. But I think when it comes to Premier League, you see it. The bottom line is, because you asked me about Liverpool, is Darwin Núñez, we've been here before. He works hard, he scores, but the worst in terms of their big chance conversion in top 5 in Europe. 11 goals in the Premier League, 11 goals on 103 shots. And we've seen that. So if he does come around and score a goal or two, you always wonder how meaningful those goals may be. But I think in a run-in like this, where with Manchester City having everybody available and everybody capable of scoring from just about everywhere, right? I mean, look at Joško Gvardiol. He's scoring for fun, Champions League and Premier League now. Maybe he's not the best example. I just have a feeling, jittery, Luis Diaz jittery, and you have Mo Salah, who's picked the worst time not to be scoring. Obviously, he's had some injuries, hasn't had the consistency that he normally has, where he plays from first whistle until the last. So I think that's an easy pick right there, because they've created enough chances in all those games that we've mentioned.
Before we let you go, Ryan, if City are to go on and do it, it will be a 4-peat. It will be 6 in the last 7 years. Some praise if they are to go on and do that for everything we've seen from City over these last 5 or so years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to point out too that they're doing it at a time where, like, the relegation level teams in the Premier League are signing players from like the best teams in Serie A and the Bundesliga. So I think in a lot of ways, like, the Premier League is more competitive than it's ever been. The big six have more money than ever before. The mid-table, as we're seeing with Villa this year, as we've seen with Brighton recently, are better than ever before. So City are doing all of that at a time where, like, the level of play, I think, at the bottom of the league is higher than it's ever been before. So I think that it might even undersell kind of how impressive of a run it is. At the same time, I would be remiss to not point out that there are over 100 financial charges that are being looked at by the league. So at the same time, we know City have more resources than anyone in the league on paper. We also don't know sort of exactly what resources were used to build these teams overall. So it's an unfortunate thing to have to point out. And it's kind of becoming a growing reality in the Premier League, where we don't actually know what's going on with any of the teams in the league. But yeah, I mean, they're just the best English soccer team of all time. Like, I don't really think it's even arguable.
Ryan, it's great to have you on as always. Make sure if you are an ESPN Plus subscriber, you do get your exclusive content. Ryan's latest article, How and Why Liverpool's Premier League and Europa League quest is falling apart. Thanks so much for being with us, Ryan. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Good man, Ryan.